Little Hand says it's time to rock and roll.
Bring the noise.
Go.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the E-Tims podcast. My name is Desmond, and tonight, for now, I am joined by Hector Bandido and Monty Burns. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, Desi. Good evening, everyone.
I do know that Monty Burns across the water has a beer in his hand, but I'm very shocked that on the video, Hector, you're not popping the champagne, because after all, you did predict. Hopefully everyone was listening to the last podcast. You did predict a narrow victory for a lucky Italian team. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, we had a wee chat at the end of the last podcast, didn't we? Because the Euros had just started, and it was actually great relief after the shit year we had been Celtic fans, right? To quite a good tournament, and we all had a wee shot, and France were the obvious ones, weren't they? They were just, I think they were just too full of themselves, weren't they? Terrible attitude. Yeah. And that's how was it Switzerland? I mean, any team sees that out. But I thought just for the first group games, Italy just looked like a really good, actually un-Italian-like, if that makes sense, in terms of how they played. But maybe that's, if you watch Italian football, they're actually quite attacking, has been for a few years now. So Mancini was brilliant, and by far the better team, deserved to win the tournament. In fact, I talk about England were dreadful. And the luck of the draw helped them out. But against Denmark, they got that never a penalty. And that could have went to penalties. That game probably would have went to penalties. And I think with their record of penalty shootouts, there's a strong chance that they may have lost that as well. So I was just delighted. I think a lot of folk hear us in Scotland and probably in Ireland and Wales, you name the country, and they probably think, Christ, there's this hatred towards England. And we keep saying, no, it's called rivalry. You always get one or two that step over the line, but it's just listening to the incessant shite. ITV News, BBC News, any other game in the Euros, and they always talk about England. It gets a point you can't take anymore, and you're desperate for them to get pumped. And I'd reached that point.
We're not happy to see that plucky wee outsider Italy finally make it big on the football stage.
Remember that, right? Remember it was the game. It was Sam Matterface, who I'd never heard of before, actually, until
Sam Matterface. He's actually
Matterface. And Lee Dixon, and it was interesting. I think it was Italy's, maybe been their third game, either their second or third game. They won 3-0. The third game, they won 3-0, beat Wales 1-0. I think it was then, whatever, they won 3-0. And they were saying, there he is, Mancini, Matterface, bringing Italy out of the international wilderness. And you thought, okay, they didn't get to the 2018 World Cup, the first time ever, right? But they've won 4 World Cups, 6 World Cup finals, won the Euros before, lost 2 Euro finals. And it was 2 Euros ago they got to the final. And that you just get annoyed thinking this is just ignorance. And then Dixon pipes in. He goes towards the end. Yeah, Italy, the team that most of the big boys will want to avoid. And I'm going, Italy are one of the fucking big boys. It grinds you down, doesn't it? We try your best every tournament. Don't bite. But the thing is, they're not actually trying to wind you up. This is just how they are. Yep. It's arrogance. Yeah. And anyway, they get beat. Thank God. Could you imagine they'd won? Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I was going to come to that. Monty, were you upset, especially with 2 Irishmen in the English squad? Result?
Obviously, significant commiserations from Ireland to those 2 former internationals, Rice and Grealish. As somebody pointed out, had they stuck with Ireland, they could have been celebrating last night. I think the whole country erupted. It's a tough one. Like, Southgate comes across as a decent chap, sort of fella. He seems to have integrity. And as a squad, they don't have any of the arrogance they had previously, but Hector's touched upon it. I'd say the entire European continent was happy that they didn't win it. They're just it's just what they are. There's rivalry, and then there's the idiocy that you've seen outside the stadium, and they're even trashing their own city. They just can't help themselves, and there's a great parallel to that other crowd across the city in Glasgow. There's just a mentality there that 95% of people just find completely alien, and their media hype it up. There's some brilliant memes doing the rounds last night, were very, very funny. and some of them actually quite sort of raw into the bone. You know, there was one doing the rounds of the England team. Had Priti Patel been able to implement their policies, only 3 of them would have been able to start or play the game. You know, there's so much subtext to it, but they're just a deeply unlikable shower, and it's great to see Italy win it from as Hector pointed out. Ironically, I was watching the game last night thinking England are trying to outdo Italy. You know, the whole Catenaccio, sit back, try and soak it up. They just don't have the technical capability or the mentality to do that. And it was lovely watching Italy pummel.
England had actually played that way almost all tournament.
Whole tournament,
right?
Yeah.
They played the two protecting. The boy Rice was actually, I thought, the best player last night. He was excellent. He went off and they played the same way all tournament. They played to go in the counter or to get a goal through a set piece, and they didn't deviate from that. They were lucky to get Ukraine, who were, sometimes you get a team you're beat before a ball's kicked. They just had that look about them, didn't they? Even that game was 1-0, was it at half time, and it was dire. It was dire again. And I think what's frustrating, see if you just put the football head on with England, right? Put aside rivalry and everything else. You mentioned Southgate being a decent, and he comes across fairly decent. Although he did mention the war. Couldn't fucking help himself, could he, 2 or 3 days ago, right? God almighty, right? But the thing that's frustrating about them in particular is they've got an incredible amount of talent there, attacking talent on the bench. And God knows why he wouldn't play these guys earlier. You know, the Grealish. Yeah. Phil Foden is arguably the most talented.
He was injured for the final, but...
No, but even before that, all the games they played.
Jadon Sancho.
Rashford. Arguably the most talented, skillful group of players they've had in my lifetime in terms of attacking threat. And the fact he won't play them, even last night when he brings on 2 kids with a minute, think about that from a management perspective. I'm going to give these 2 kids 1 minute at the end of extra time just before penalties. Not give them 10 minutes, 50 minutes to get a feel of the ball, get into the atmosphere. 1 minute, you're taking a penalty.
Yeah, of that magnitude. And there's something there. I don't know. I don't know whether that's an arrogance thing or whether it's just genuinely someone overthinking or over-engineering it as a coach. But I don't think either Rashford or Sancho actually touched the ball in the minute and a half, 2 minutes.
Oh, they touched it twice. Sorry, yeah, because I looked it up today. Sorry, Monty. The penalty was their 3rd touch each.
Rashford took a shy. That was his 2nd touch.
And that sort of, you know, you gamify everything. So obviously they thought that these guys had the technique, and that little bit of maybe arrogance slipped in there towards the tail end of it. But I watched the coverage last night on RTE, and Didi Hamann used to play for Liverpool. He's in the studio along with Damien Duff, who was excellent, and I can't remember the third one. Brady's just boring. That's why I can't remember him. Now, if you strip out Ronnie Whelan's absolutely atrocious commentary, Ronnie Whelan was probably dipped in the soup based on how much he was kind of rooting for England in it. But Whelan called it as the game went on. He says, England have retreated back. If Italy get a goal, England won't be able to restart the engine. You can't do this. You can't do it. Why aren't they going for the jugular, having had such a good start? But Didi Hamann called it after the game. He said, England were scared to win that match. Mm-hmm. And I thought, that's quite a different angle for a professional footballer. He says, you have to win a trophy, you have to desire it so much that your fear actually becomes excitement. He says they haven't got there yet. They're afraid of winning. They don't know how to do it. And to your point, all of that talent and the fact that they played so conservatively, that's a cultural thing from a manager who's actually quite conservative. But if you gear that up towards the next tournament, you have a lot of those young boys now who've lost one. And I remember Kieran McGeeney used to say when Armagh won their first All-Ireland, you had to lose one to win one. So I wouldn't write them off in the grand context of just being limited, because someone's going to crack a formula with all that attacking talent. But I'm just delighted it wasn't last night. And fuck right. 2 years.
Before I forget, there's 2 aspects. I don't know if any of you noticed last night when Rashford and Sancho were waiting to come on. Was anyone else working? Because Italy had the ball for like a minute and they were working it back and forth. And remember, they went out and Italy quickly took a shy, so they didn't have time to get them on. And the commentator's going, they're still waiting. And I'm going, do not attack, Italy, do not attack. This is so they couldn't go, because how annoying would that have been? No, nothing against, especially Rashford. I mean, I was genuinely upset. I wasn't upset. I was genuinely sad for him when he missed his penalty. Sancho will be a revelation in the EPL. No, that way, as if it will be the EPL will make him if and when he ever joins Man United, as if his superstardom at Dortmund meant nothing. No, that way.
Aye.
But regard, that was again the arrogance didn't diminish as soon as they'd lost.
Nope.
Moved straight to roll on Qatar. We'll be brilliant in Qatar, and that's a football lifetime away. I honestly think Southgate will be away before Qatar. He's already talked about he's going to take a rest, and he doesn't want to talk about signing a new contract just yet. He's going to recharge, and then he'll look at see. At this point in time, he'd love to take these boys to Qatar, but let's just wait and see. And I'm thinking, if Ole Gunnar Solskjaer does not hit the ground running with Man United, then I could quite easily see them making a wee phone call to Southgate.
Can we just turn this and it's just his head just to wee bit? We spoke about them and briefly about Italy, right? And we'd mentioned the last podcast that unlike previous Italian teams, there wasn't a superstar in attack. Usually for the world class 10 or a striker, we mentioned the ball, Vialli and Mancini, obviously, and Baggio and Zola, and there was that many of them. But this was a pure team of people who just gave everything for the team. Yep. And they pressed, got the ball back, they fought for each other. You could see that. But you've got to mention Bonucci and Chiesa. Oh my God!
Oh,
man!
I mean, right? 134 and 136. But if you wanted to,
Chiellini.
Oh, sorry, Chiellini. My apologies.
The star striker.
Aye, if you wanted to just pick, we talk about defending being a dying art because it's football has evolved and changed, right? Whether you like it or not. Talk about two guys who can both technically do the stuff that touch, pass, move, 20-yard pass, 30-yard. But they make it look effortless. But see the art of defending where bang tight, or it's the organisation where they're pointing to this guy in midfield. You see them pointing to him, you take. Or Chiellini, was it 5 minutes to go in added time? He's way up almost at left wing. You know what I mean? A guy, 36-year-old guy, right? Yeah. But that was when he come to. And the beauty of them is they know how to defend. And so in the boy Saka, one of the few mistakes that Chiellini did. And he thought the ball's going out, and Saka just got there first, and he grabbed him by the shirt collar and pulled him back. And it was just a work of art, wasn't it? Just there we go. I'll take my card, off you go.
Did you not see that the meme? I don't know if it was a Scottish football card somebody put up, and it was Chiellini with his hand on his Saka's collar, and they had the text. Football on Saka, and then coming home to the right, and then Chiellini basically pulling football away from coming home, football from home.
There was a great quote I seen doing the rounds. And actually, as we've been talking, I just went to find it. A Mourinho quote about the two of them when he was United manager. United played Juventus. And his exact quote was, Mr. Bonucci and Mr. Chiellini could give some Harvard University classes about how to be a central defender. Mm-hmm. And it was embellished a little bit for what I'd seen earlier. It's just perfection for them. It's just art almost. And I love that. I love that absolute ruthlessness, but done with a bit of that sort of classic Italian, flair class. He just mugged them back. But he did it in an area of the pitch he was never getting a red card. He did it smart.
And they also look like two bodyguards.
They do,
don't they? I mean,
like two scaffolders. That's what I think.
Assassins. You wouldn't fuck with them. You bumped into them anywhere. You wouldn't fuck with them.
I was listening to, unfortunately, I did a BBC One on ITV, and I watched BBC One, and it was the first. I think Kane had won the first header against Chiellini. And whoever it was, Genis. And he's going, yeah, Kane's putting him under pressure. He's getting the better of the Italian defence all the time. And that was the last time Kane really touched the ball until he took a penalty.
He set up the goal and then
that was it. That was the kind of the last time he'd sort of done anything. And you're right, just watching. And by the way, so the one other thing came out. It turns out the two of them are always been teammates for years, but their families are all tight, and they're all going on holiday on Wednesday. All them, their wives, their kids are all going away to those two. Unbelievable! Imagine meeting those two on holiday. God.
Yeah, but there was another aspect that wasn't really mentioned much, and that was they kept talking about like the Kane and somebody else in the England team, Sancho, the whole transfer debacle. It must be on their minds about where they're going to be going this summer. Chiellini's not got a contract yet. He's got a contract. The Beckham signed for Juventus. Reckon over a year's contract. It's a contract. I mean, Messi's away winning the Copa America with no contract. Chiellini's that's the future. You don't need a contract. You don't even need a club to turn up for your country and win it and then go back home. So there was none of that on his mind. No, that way, none of this whole, I've got a lot to deal with mentally. He was just and done a job and that was it done. But they expect him to sign for Juventus for another year. But could you imagine Peter Lawwell being offered that? Right, we've got this 36-year-old defender. He's really good. Not the quickest. Can we sell him on? No, I don't know. How much is he wanting? Like, how much is he going to get Juventus, you think, Chiellini? Name his own price. Because everybody will have him on the jersey, won't they now?
By the way, the other thing, I know was it Friday night, Saturday night, the local rags here, it's the only independence paper, but it's a tabloid, right, the National. Aye, blah, 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 hit and miss, over the top shite at times. But anyway, they did a front page, and it was, they'd used the Braveheart thing, and they put Mancini's face on Mel Gibson's Braveheart thing. And in effect, it was saying, Italy, please do it for us. So they get slated by a lot of people, and there's some folk can't take a joke, and they're too desperate to be seen. The cringe factor, oh my God, anyway, blah, blah, blah. So Italy won it. What if you've seen it? The Italian plane came back, and there he is on the plane, Mancini at the front with the other coach. And underneath the European Championship trophy is the National, the first national paper. It's fantastic. You know what I mean? Oh,
yeah.
So it was
striking a blow for freedom for Scotland. I just love it. Absolutely loved it. But you gotta think. I think I fired up. We were chipping through the week on a WhatsApp about Celtic's level and where we fit into the grand European scheme. And if you look at those four teams in the semi-finals, realistically, there's maybe one or two in the Danish squad that you could hope Celtic would be attractive for. But out England, no chance. Italy, no chance. Spain, no chance. So then you move out to the quarterfinals, and it's trying to understand where, like, Scotland did well, first tournament in how long? You did as much as you could be expected. I think you got to compete. But that recalibration of us in line with the European Championships is going to be quite a painful thing, because realistically now, if we come up against an Italian team, we had an outlier with Lazio, we come up against an English team, we come up against a Spanish team, we're not expected to do anything anymore, and that's a significant drop for Celtic. And I think somehow, if there's a way to bridge a gap to getting players from those top 4, top 5 countries, we did it with the French ones with Rodgers. And it'd be interesting, maybe we'll come on to it when we talk about Postecoglou and how he started. But I'd like to see us have at least the ambition to go and try and get a current international in one of these top 6 teams, top 8 teams. But I just don't think we're attracted to them anymore. So maybe that's for later's discussion. But as I sit here sitting already, I'm quite good about what I have to say.
No, again, we can touch on that in a while, because I think it is the reality of where we really are is a topic that we have discussed every pre-season, and we have been circling the drain, let's be brutally honest, but we'll come back to that. Right, quick, so we covered the Euros enough for you, Hector. So have you wallowed in your glory of predicting early who would win it?
And one more thing, Italy, quarterfinals, they beat Belgium, arguably the favourites, and they beat them, fully deserved to beat them. In the semis, they beat Spain, and I thought Spain were probably the better team, narrowly edged it, but Spain are unique in how they keep possession. And then they went to Wembley and beat England. So they didn't just win it. They went the hardest possible route to win it. So bravo, Italia.
Absolutely.
Well done. We can all enjoy our Bravissimo catalogues a little bit more these days. So that was good. Okay, so that was the Euros. So well done, Hector. So so hopefully everyone followed Hector's recommendations and had a punt if you were betting on the Euros. We'll come to that also. That's another question in regards betting in Celtic. But first of all, I'd just like to say rest in peace to Charlie Gallagher, who passed away. Famous Celtic player, most famous of all for providing the ball for Billy McNeil to head against Dunfermline, I think it was, Hector, in the famous 65 Cup final, and then against Vojvodina in 67, in the run for 67. That's Charlie. Charlie Gallagher used to actually sit just along from me in the main stand and trying me. I used to see every now and again adults would bring their kids up, and the kids didn't know who this old man was, but then the adults would turn and go, "This man's a Lisbon Lion, this man's a legend." And even though the Waynes were still kind of perplexed, but you can still see them as if they knew this was somebody they were in company with, and they always shook their hands, and if anybody wanted it and signed or a photo or anything. So God bless them. So that was a shame. I was most interested to see it was one night it was like the Gorbals Irishman, Monty, turned out twice for Ireland under the granny rule.
Yeah.
That was a shock to see the granny rule was so old. Before that was a modern phenomenon.
Indeed, we were just talking about it before we started this. I thought that was a Jack Charlton phenomenon, and that was kind of the start of it, where we looked to exploit it. But it seems he had 2 caps. One, I think, was in Turkey, which I think I heard him talk about, that there was no crowd control. I think they were basically being spat on and abused on the way in. And second cap, I think, was in Dublin against the Czech Republic. But yeah, that was the standout stat that I read, when I was reading up on the link he sent around earlier on him. So yeah, he's a good servant to Celtic, and rest in peace.
Yeah, and then Dumbarton. And also I'd just like to say a personal RIP to Michael Canning, who was a former neighbour and pal, sadly passed away at only the age of 40 from motor neuron disease. His brother Stephen, he put up a lovely video of him and Michael at one of the recent Hampden Cup finals, one of their last games together that they managed to get to. So rest in peace, Michael. And then that's us. So let's move on to where we are. Monty, we're not going to celebrate the glorious 12, even though he did request it on the agenda. 12th of July, I'm afraid. We're just going to move on. Let's look forward. How was your bonfires? Were they okay over by the direction you wanted them to topple in?
Well, it's certainly been the most enjoyable 11th of July night I've had in my life, but that was completely unrelated and more to do with the football. I think the cheers went up at the same time as I'm sure they did around the bonfires last night. There was some coverage, actually. It's been quiet. It was quieter last year, obviously, with the pandemic. So, no, it's the last kicks of a Dan mule, I think, over here. So, thankfully, no noise. The sun's out. It's give to be a really, really nice week, and everybody's off work. So, sure, what more can you ask for?
Okay, I'm liking that phrase, last kick of a dying mule. I'll come to you, Hector. Lee Griffiths, a new contract, same old Lee. What do you think of that news? And then the subsequent
can we even comment on this?
The subsequent allegations.
Well, he was given a 1-year contract, wasn't he? No sooner had he signed it than good old Lee finds himself in trouble yet again. So obviously we can't talk about any of the detail, but let's just say if it's found out to be true, then I think there's no way back. They'd have to just rip up his contract, and no doubt there'll be a clause, hopefully in there somewhere. But if there's a modern player who's just threw away the top of the Euros there in Scotland in particular, but Scotland were dying. See for a player like him, a number 9 like Griffiths at his peak. Guy's only 30, by the way. His physical peak I'm talking about. Griffiths would have scored 2 or 3 goals for Scotland in that Euros there. The chances they had in his position.
Yep.
And the guy's just thrown everything away. Look at his private life in terms of number of partners and kids and everything else. And it's a waste, and just a shame. A shame in so many ways. But, he's not the first and he won't be the last. Anyway.
I think for Postecoglou, it's one of those, you really didn't need that. He's gone out, he talked to the guy, he's given him a kind of an endorsement, it seems, and then this rears its head. There's an old, it's a bit cliched now, there's an old slide deck that the rounds about company culture, any organizational culture. It was Netflix. And they had in it one particular slide, and it talks about jerks in the American context. We don't hire expensive, brilliant jerks. The whole thing was you don't hire someone who's disruptive no matter how good they are, because ultimately the cost to the group is higher. So what you do if you find it, you've got one, is you give them a really, really expensive payout, tell them to fuck off. So it looks like Ange has found the hard way that he maybe has one of those in the group. And it could well be that the statement is very simple. How do you even come back from that? You're not even a week into building a relationship with a guy, and it seems that he's fucked you over. So if I was in Postecoglou's shoes right now, I'd be going up the chain to Mackay and saying, go and get me Kevin Nisbet. I'm not interested in even taking that guy back. If he comes back, brilliant, I've got 2. But go and get me a proven SPFL striker right now, because I need one. I'll just cut it loose. There's no point. But, innocent until proven guilty and all that. But it just seems to be too disruptive at this stage.
Well, exactly. And I think Hector kind of summed up to you, just a danger to himself in the way career-wise. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason. We've been through the whole mental health thing. I think the club, to be fair to them, seem to have tried everything they can. I mean, I don't really think we can cite anything they've done wrong at this point. I personally wasn't in favour of the new contract purely in respect to how he'd performed over the last couple of years. Well, that sort of idea was nothing personally or anything. I did think we'd been better, say, investing that £1 million in wages, etc. in a Kevin Nisbet bid.
Aye.
Right, but we'll come to new bodies, and after we've dealt with Griffiths. Let's go back a couple of weeks. Again, Hector, I'll just come to you and then we'll fling it over to Monty. The Ange mic'd up training session. Chicky Young called it a stunt, which seems a bit cheeky of him, but when I was listening to him describing it, I thought, well, that's kind of, is that true? Is there a bit of a hint of a truth for that? Celtic doing a wee selective 3-minute video release whereby we get to see Ange in the middle of the training ground telling everybody what to do, etc., etc. Is it just a nice wee bit of PR, or was it a nice insight, a good insight into the way the guy works?
It's a wee bit of both. Chick Young's Chick Young. That's blah blah blah, right? But there's two ways about it. It's obviously it's a nice bit of PR, right? Because fans, including of every generation, you like to see insights from the training field. I don't know you, but I love it when you get wee snippets. But what they've done, obviously, they've condensed it into sound bites and blah 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 blah. Now, I've watched it. We'll probably watched it many times. What Ange has done is probably no different from the vast majority of half-decent coaches out there, right? Being positivity. And as I say, that's cut down maybe a 2-hour session or whatever into 2.5 to 3 minutes. Positivity, good touch, building confidence, getting players, making a relationship with players, making them feel positive, making them feel happy and comfortable in the surroundings working with him. And just all that positive language. Doesn't matter what you work as, sport in particular is a biggie, but our line of business, it's good to work for a boss that's positive. I think we all usually bounce off positive bosses, right? Yeah. But he made 1 or 2 sound bites. One in particular I was talking about, right? We don't stop. The only time we stop is at full time, in effect, right? And it was along those lines, and that's good to hear, right? And it's about using the ball and we'll tire the team out. And it's the stuff that we want to hear after such a terrible season last season where the players looked unfit at times, unfortunately, right? So I get it. I totally get it. The club's right to do it. I would actually like to see a wee bit more. Obviously, I'm not going to show the specific tactical formations and drills, but I'd like to see a wee bit more of that because I think it's just good to see. It energises you, hopefully, and you can see some of the kind of intentions that he has as a new manager, his philosophy. And I'd encourage it a wee bit more if possible from the club.
Monty, did you catch it?
I did, yeah. My initial sort of view, that whole positive reinforcement thing that Hector just touched upon. It's nice to see that. Nice to see some of the little subtle things, little fist bumps to players coming on the field and all, and everybody by name. It's just simple, basic, and very effective management. You only get one chance at, one shot at making an impression. I think if you look into it a little bit more, though, he's dealing with the kids at the minute, or at least he started with. He's only starting to get what's left of the senior players back. So I suspect he's just forming an opinion right now of the base that he has. So everything will be positive and everything will be great until you know what's going on. And after that, if he's as direct and forthright as we hope he'll be, going to be straight up the stairs with a list of what he needs, and he needs it urgently. My gut tells me, by the way, I hate to say it, we haven't even started with a man, but I think we're going to be building on a nucleus of kids, 2 or 3 signings. 1 or 2 will stay till the end of their contract. And you can scrub this year in terms of European ambition, or, if we get into the Champions League, it would be some sort of incredible bonus miracle. We're probably looking at Europa League football if we get there, and then we go from there. So, I don't know.
Right, okay. I'll deal with the elephant or the hummingbird in the room and say to everyone listening on the podcast, because we did have a few comments on the last one, if you had 29 minutes for Monty's smoke alarm going off, we've now heard it twice. Start place your bets to see how many times we hear it during that.
I'm going to get a battery for that tomorrow.
So how much is a battery in Northern Ireland these days for a smoke alarm? Yes,
Get
we
one
got the
tomorrow.
squad, right? Before we come to the squad, let's go back to this whole mic'd up session. Because again, Hector, I totally agree, and again, it would be good if we heard more of it. But what I thought was quite interesting, the Charlton game was watching at the weekend, was watching Ange just sitting in that seat himself. And he just seemed to be quite very quiet. Again, he might have just been taken all on and he's not got much to say, or else maybe it wasn't the audio wasn't there good enough to pick him up. But I thought that was a wee bit of kind of contrast. But what we did have, Hector, is John Kennedy and Gavin Strachan sitting there quite comfortable, back in the fold, no going anywhere. Are you surprised by that, or do you think they're definitely going to be there full time, or do you think he's still working on the idea of assessing them?
It's a difficult one, right? Because remember the situation where all they put all their eggs in one basket to get Howe, and Howe would have brought his own coaching staff. That, like Rodgers, he'd have done that. That fell apart at the last minute, and they've gone out to Ange. But Ange has had to go through various checks to get here due to the current COVID situation. Was it a week or 10 days he had to stay? Was it in London before he even got here? But I'm led to believe that some of Ange's coaches, not all of them, are Japanese. What benefit would they bring coming here, right? So if he may have one or two Australian coaches, I really don't know, but I'm not too fussed right now. I think too many fans are pointing their anger in the wrong direction. The John Kennedys, the Strachans, they don't determine their role at the club. Or, they're there, and if Ange wants to get rid of them, Ange ultimately can get rid of them. Is now the right time to do that? Probably not, because the guy's just in the door. The guy probably has a bit of insight from the guys who are here about the Scottish game, and that's why letting Scott Brown grow low, was crazy. Because forget Brown playing week in, week out, but just as a leader and the guy who'd been there for years, working with Rodgers and working with obviously Lennon and others, and knowing Scottish football better than anyone, Brown would have been great, perhaps as an assistant coach working with Ange to help over the next year at least. So I'm less concerned with Strachan and Kennedy. I think fans make too big a deal out of this. I think Ange seems like the kind of guy that is his own man, and I think if he's getting pissed about and fucked off ultimately, I think he'll leave. Simple as that. I think he's kind of, just my perception is watching wee snippets of the guy. He seems like a typical sort of Australian type guy that takes no shit. If that makes sense. Yeah, without wanting to typecast everybody from Australia.
Stereotypes.
But you know what I mean, don't you? He kind of seems as if I'm not taking shit. I'll walk.
Yeah. I think he's kind of recut their jobs. Do you think he's reset their parameters where Lennon wanted them? Lennon's style of delegation and hunting it down, and it was Kennedy and Strachan running the sessions, where Postecoglou's the one running the sessions, and Kennedy and Strachan are, putting out the bibs, or maybe they're taking the warm down after the warm up. Do you think he's that type of guy, Hector? Do you think is he imposing a set of, this is what I want you to do now on a coach? Because ultimately a coach is just there for the direction of the manager, right?
I totally agree with that. And I think with the Kennedy thing, and we all felt disappointed last year, but would Kennedy get criticised under Brendan Rodgers? No, because Celtic were successful. So you're right. The manager sets the sort of direction of where the club's going. He seems hands-on, unlike Lennon when it comes to the coaching ground, and that's where you make the relationships with the players, isn't it? You set the bar. You're there constantly. You repeat all the good habits, chase all the shit habits, and if they're working tightly with him, he'll maybe delegate certain things. But no, I'm not too concerned about them. But what I would like to see is that he has a chance to bring in some of his own people at the right time, whether it be sports science, whether it be some other conditioning coach, or people he's worked with, right, who clearly must speak English, right? It's pointless bringing Japanese guys over if they can't speak English. Yeah. That's just crazy, right? So I'm less concerned.
I think you've touched upon something, and Desi, maybe before we jump on the next piece, the notion of him building a set of structures and bringing back the things that we had under Rodgers that we all perceive basically diminished over the last 2 to 3 years. That'll be interesting because, if he's here, he's been framed as a builder, someone who builds a club from not the bottom up, but at least puts a style onto it. And, you're then into everything from the underage teams to promoting youth. He seemed to be that. So I'd be hopeful. But again, the proof of this is going to be, I seen a floating rumour that potentially the club's going to go out for a share issue in the autumn or early winter. And if that's to build structures behind this Postecoglou vision, sports scientists, etc., but not a group of people who will leave with the next manager, then I'd be all for that, to the detriment of first team signings for at least a year. And I think that we're going to see now what the guy's game is, and we're going to see what Mackay's game is. Are they here to genuinely put down foundations? Because if that's the case, we as a fan base, I think, need to be realistic about what the next 12 months will bring. Be a load of excitement, be easy on the eye. It's not going to be particularly mature, you would imagine, tactically in Europe. And we're going to see a load of kids get a chance. I mean, what's so bad about that?
It was a very interesting. I was just thinking about for the Japanese angle. I was going to make a joke. Well, hopefully we could even bring Nakamura, or thinking of Chiellini. Well, maybe it's a case of somebody in Japan who would have a lot of older players. Maybe we could get their sports science guys over here, and then we could make use of some of the older players in Scotland. But I'm just thinking there. We had an advert recently, and I seen Boys Analytics, all the analytics people on Twitter that we interact with, Hector. Somebody suggested, here's a possible job for you. It's Celtic, and it's a first team talent acquirer. Yeah. And basically a scout. Basically, they're looking for a chief scout. But they're advertising it, and I'm going, is that the level we have sunk to now? They were starting to advertise for these things. Do we not have connections in the football world? I mean, we've been through this for the director of football, that went nowhere. I mean, now we're looking for a talent scout, and I'm just kind of thinking everything just seems so kind of haphazard and amateurish. We just don't have that professional feeling. I don't think.
The legacy of Peter Lawwell. You're talking about young Desimont.
Yeah. I don't know that it's such a bad thing. If it looks on the face of it to be a little bit, surely that's not how the big boys work. Well, then maybe we're just not as big a boy as we perceive ourselves to be. But if all we did was taps on the shoulder and does such and such know anybody in the City group previously, if that was the limit of it, then why not go out to the market and see what's out there? If we can't target people, we don't know how to.
But you're a technical guru out there in the business world, Monty. They mean we've all experienced headhunters in our life, so to speak. Surely they should be dealing at a level whereby it's no an advert in the evening time saying man wanted, stroke women wanted for position. I mean, it just strikes a kind of amateurism. But again, the other side of that was that boy for Glasgow who ended up getting a job with Brendan Rodgers at Celtic. Celtic then gradually let him go with replacing him at Celtic as soon as Brendan Rodgers left.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've got a dog fighting with a palla behind me here. The
Ralph's dog.
No, we Charlie and Emilio. No. So that's a possible scout angle. Right. So then talking about the squad, I'll come to you, Monty, because you're always the person that says there is a player in there somewhere. Yeah. A Jetty, is he a man reborn under Ange? 2 goals in 2 pre-season games.
He's a stone and a half lighter by the looks of him, which isn't a bad thing for someone's attitude, for someone to come back and make a statement. He looked overweight last year, even at the start. He didn't look fit, mind. He had that whole delay in getting up to getting to the club. He seemed like an extra month off for some bizarre reason. Funny, I think the boys that we brought in last year during the pandemic who didn't settle, we will see something of them. I think Yeti, there's a player there. He started well, if you remember, even last year, but then he got injured and we didn't see him again. So yes, I think we'll get a return out of him. I think we'll also get a return out of Barkas. Although I see, by the way, Matt Ryan, that Australian goalkeeper, signed for Real Sociedad this evening, so he's not an option. He's gone. Yeah,
but I've seen some Greek journalists has already said Barkas, a loan back to Greece is not an option. He's looking to stay after top play Ange.
I suspect these boys
will be number one, playing as a sweeper keeper, playing right up.
But you pay there's what do we pay in transfer fees for those two? They've got to 10 million, 9 million, 10 million. Yeah. I think we'll see 2 5 million pound players this year. I think we just didn't see them last year for all sorts of reasons. So, I'm glad we need a striker, irrespective of Griffith's madness. We just need someone to step up because Eddie's most likely going to go. So,
and you've lost your friend Bayo. He's away.
Definitely a player in there. He'll bang them in for Ghent and Belgium. Here's a question: do you think the Belgian league is a higher standard than the SPFL?
Yeah, I'd say slightly, not significantly, but
Depends
slightly
what
higher.
level you mean. What level do you mean? It's a slower pace, but maybe a more technical, comfortable on the ball. But it's got the same impact, I'd say, actual in the European football context. They don't contest any trophies. They're not like they've got a great international team because they've been through the same idea as the France individuals and through the Fontainebleau Academy. They've got a great academy structure, I think, national wise. But actually, the teams themselves are not that strong. They're not that great.
I just feel extremely disappointed with the lack of activity, right? And as you guys were talking, you'd obviously Bayo was with a laugh with him before, but they've sold him, right? And the sounds of it, they've got the money back in him. Yeah. It was £2 million. Jack Hendry, they get slightly more than the money back. I know Dundee get a wee cut of that, but in effect, they've got maybe 2 million plus another 1.5 to 2 million. There's 4 million there, right? They sold Klimala for £3 million to New York. There's about 7 million. And they sold Frimpong for, was it £11 million in January? So there's the crux of 15 to 20 million pounds there, right? And Bruni has big wages away, and obviously the loan players are on big money. Gabriel Yunusi's the worst right back I've ever seen, back to Everton, and that big, it should have been a success, but these things happen with Duffy. That's an incredible amount of money the club have actually generated, saved in wages, and they've got money sitting there through the transfer. And I appreciate pandemic, but I kind of thinking on a couple of us who's done that. That's good. I see that's good business doing that, right? That's a positive. Yes. So they're sitting there, and we're playing next week, and we've not signed one recognised first team player. One recognised first team player. And it's just incredible. It's absolutely incredible that we can be this close to playing our first competitive match, which so happens to be the Champions League qualifier, which Desi alluded to earlier. It's like Groundhog Day every year. And we've let guys go, and we've not got any replacements in at all. Yeah, I'm sorry, but I don't know where to start with that. I know, Monty, you probably the youth, no, but I'm sorry, no, it's not good enough. It's just not good enough. It's not good enough by any means. We've stood up again, right? We've stood up again, and I hummed and hawed. Desi did the same, and I renewed, and the boys as well, to my sons, and it was the day before, and I think Desi, you were the day of the kind of deadline for renewing, and we're talking about 45 to 50,000 again, all a lot of money again for us. The club have generated a lot of cash through selling. Good thing for players in the periphery. Absolutely agree with that. And they've done nothing. They've done nothing to improve that. That team's now worse in terms of numbers. And Ange now has mentioned this. Not me. Ange has mentioned this now almost every time he does a press conference, including with Celtic TV. I need players in. I need quality. We're looking at a number of irons in the fire. How many times does this guy have to say this before Dominic Mackay and those running the club will actually try and help the guy succeed? Are they happy to let him get his arse felt against our average team next week for Denmark? Because that's what's going to happen based upon who we are right now. And it's not right. It's no fair in us, but it's actually no fair in this new guy that's came in. No fair at all on him.
The only mitigation or justification for it is that he is only in the door, and in his defence, he'll be looking at what he has, because then he has to put his nuts on the block and say, I need this guy, and this guy. He said
that already. He said, I need a right back, a centre back, I need a winger. He's made it clear. He's actually said the positions he needs right now. How many times does this guy have to say this?
Right, so we still don't have someone. We're still running, let's call it the Lowell model. All that's happened is that Dominic Mackay has took Peter's seat. We don't have it. I know it's not, but we don't have a director of football to whom all of that would be accountable.
We've never had the director of football, but we've never had one.
But this notion that the head coach would be the guy to report to the director of football, this Eddie Howe structure that we toyed with and flirted with for 3 months, if that was the route we're going down and we've stopped now, then you're absolutely bang on the money. Mackay's he started off every bit of shitebag as the guy that just left the seat in front of him. They have to pony up. They have to help him. I remember when that guy left United, the CEO, remember, was it Woodward? And this other guy took over, and they couldn't sign a player for love nor money because the guy didn't know how to close deals in football terms. And I'm wondering, are we seeing the same with Mackay? Are we going in low ball again because that's what Peter told him to do and that's what he's feeling it out? Where you just go in and go, how much is he? Manager wants him. 4 million, 20 grand a week, done. Don't fucking haggle. Just get the player that the manager needs. That's what good clubs do. That's what top clubs do. But I just think we've got an entire year here of actually a manager growing into a job and a CEO learning about the job.
But see, my point, my point was just this. Ange has been explicitly clear, right? 3 positions right now, because we did a lot of change, blah 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 blah. Right back, centre back, and wing. He couldn't have been any clearer in what he's saying, and in a professional manner. Not putting somebody under a bus. Professional manner, right? Now, we've obviously had interest in the centre back, the Swedish boy that's in the Russian league just now, right? There seems to be some negotiation going on there, but our negotiations are never quick. Our negotiations seem to drag on with this big cash cow sitting here that we just seem to ignore every year, right? The right back, there's reports for France, there's Rennes are wanting, is it 4-point-something million for a kid? We've offered 3. True or not, but there'll be the usual procrastinations there again. And then a winger. And I can't believe with the cash that the club have brought in, as I just mentioned there a while ago, in terms of big wages and the sales they've done, positive thing, very good, that even half of that, to help the guy hit the ground running, they can't have 2 or 3 players in those specific positions he mentioned, then absolutely, take your time, he'll build and get to him every day, but give the guy a chance. Give him an absolute chance to succeed, because perception's 9/10 the laws, we know in Scotland, especially with this guy coming in. You know how I felt about it. He needs every support he can get. And if he loses his first few games, honest to God, they might not be coming back for this guy with a lot of the fans. So why would the club put him in that situation? Why not get the lie of the land and help him? I just don't get it. I don't get it.
Right, from a Groundhog Day perspective, right, we'll use those 3 examples, or 2 examples, and another example you kind of alluded to, Hector. I was just looking at the kind of Celtic transfer stories for the last couple of weeks, right? So we did sign Sheffield Wednesday defender on a 4-year deal, Osaze Ugadide from Sheffield Wednesday, right? 20-year-old who's made 19 appearances, and apparently he's got great potential. I watched him on Saturday and he looked like just a big lumbering kid. So again, that is a project. 5-wonder project, yet again.
That's not a problem.
No, I don't mean that, but right? No, we're talking about priorities here.
Yeah.
The priority is not a project. I mean, that might be, you might have we've already got enough many projects that we signed 2 seasons ago and never saw them at all last season. I mean, you look at Connells and all that and various others. So it's a priority aspect I'm meaning here. And fair play to the young boy, and hopefully he makes it. But again, he's a centre-half stroke right back, a utility player. We don't need utility players at this point. We need special, direct talent for a specific position. You know what I mean? We need to be exact when we're signings. We just don't need these open-minded projects and utility. We don't need another Neil Beaton. I mean, we don't need a 5 out of 10 man who can play in a few positions. We need hard and fast experience that can get us. I was having a chat with Lachie Moore on Twitter when he was saying, give the Nuvies him a chance. And I'm saying we don't need superstars here. We're not looking to, because he was talking about there's always these back and forward negotiations for big clubs. We're not a big club. In this day and age, we are not a big club. We might think we're a bit, when it comes to world soccer, we're not a big club. We're haggling for people at £4 million. We're not buying somebody at £40 million. We're not haggling for like £50 million. Then that brings you to Brandon Soppy of Stade Rennais, 4.2 million. Celtic going off for free.
19, but 19,
not even 4.
But a 19, but again, a 19-year-old right back in the top 5 leagues.
And again, he hardly played last season. He is an R prospect. So he's basically an R Jeremy Frimpong, but slightly bit dearer. That's what we're going for. He's a wee bit more kind of inside than Jeremy Frimpong was a wing back, right back. But again, we can't get that deal over the line. And then the main one that we all can see a big glaring hole in the Celtic team for the last year, centre half, Carl Starfelt, a big Swedish centre half. That would be ideal. A big solid centre half just to clear your lines and direct people like Lustig used to do from the right back position.
Think about this.
Just before we move. Kazan, because they've got a sell-on clause, and we're haggling about who should make up the sell-on clause. So again, even if it's a case of we're getting messed about. Why don't we go in and say, much do you want? 4 million, there's the 4 million, and they go, yeah, there's a selling clause, and we go, well, you deal with that, and they say, no, we want you to pay it, and we either go, we'll pay it, or we don't, we'll just walk away, it's done. We move on to option 2. We don't have this lingering for weeks and weeks and weeks. As you say, Hector, we're playing the Champions League next week, and we've not got any players in. Our current centre-half pairing is Nir Bitton and Stephen Welsh. Bitton has been the answer to our problems for the last four 3 seasons. Nir Bitton, that's the level we're dealing with at the moment. Let's not forget that. So it's terrible.
Before you move off Starfelt, you got to understand as well, this is a guy that, let's be honest, none of us had heard of until he was mentioned in the media 4 weeks ago. This is a guy who couldn't get into the Swedish squad ahead of Philip Helander, who can't get a game across the city. So we got to be very, very cautious of what's being reported in the media, along with how it's being positioned to us. And Postecoglou's only in the door. We're going to see very, very quickly if the club can support him to the level that he wants. But I think there's so much change and so much flux at the minute. You're right, next week could be just a painful lesson in preparation. And if it is, it is. I don't think we'll play our hand as regards signings until we know what we land on in Europe. So again, we're still stuck with the Peter.
That's back to front.
But it is. But if you're only in the door, and I would point the finger at McKay and go, "What the fuck were you doing? What were you doing for the 3 months?" But my point is this: what were you doing for the 3 months sitting there having tea and biscuits with Peter? What were you doing? What were you learning? How Peter did it? To run it the way Peter did it? Or are you going to make your changes incrementally as you go? Or are you going to try and support the guy that you've brought in and told everybody this is the guy you wanted? He's not doing anything at the minute, and that's what would concern me more. So it sounds like we've just got a different head in the CEO chair who's playing exactly the same cards as the previous one. Now, that's acceptable for 1 year. If you're implementing change at this significance, you get away with that once. You don't fucking do it again. And it's not what he's going to do in the next 2 to 3 weeks that becomes important. It's what he does in the next 3 months, that old classic first 90 days. So does he sign anybody? Does Postecoglou get backroom support? Do we see significant inroads into these new markets and all those other things that the CEO's meant to do? But primarily, and the only thing that we really give a fuck about, are they going to sign the players that the manager wants? I have another thing in my head which doesn't absolve Postecoglou of it. This is his first time in Europe. Does he even fucking know who the players that he wants are? I don't think he does. And he doesn't have a scouting network.
Yeah, but I get that. But see how, modern technology and everything else, right? The guys are switched on. They'll work with whoever, relevant agents. All clubs do it. Different levels. Mendes is, the top level, whatever. Mm-hmm. We had this Israeli guy we've worked with for years and years. But they'll have other agents we'll work with, right? But they'll have a say, right, I'm looking for a right back. Right, this is my budget. 2 to 4 million, between £2 and £4 million. Celtic, ideally closer to 2, right? This is what we're after. They'll put it out there to various agents. They'll come up with a list of players. They'll sit down with Postecoglou. They'll look at the videotapes. They'll look at the graphics, the data, blah, 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 blah. And they'll say, Ange, what do you think? That's how they'll function. That's probably how we have been functioning for quite some time, because we don't have a proper scouting network in fucking place.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and that's my point though. And you think about, we lost the head sports scientist. He fucked off to somewhere in Germany, I think, last week, the week before. There's a whole flux here now and gaps all over the place. And if you're Ange Postecoglou, you're sitting going, fucking hell, who, what?
See what I don't get as well though, right? This is the bit that I genuinely don't get, right? So the club have known about the Champions League qualifiers. The first year in a long time where there's two Scottish clubs. So we had a fallback. And not just the first round. We've actually skipped a round, finished in second. We're in the second round, right? But the club's known about this for quite some time. Irrespective of who the manager is, they've known about this. The first thing they should have done, they may have done it, known Celtics would do, I think we're all pretty convinced they haven't done it, is said to Ange, look Ange, you probably need some players. These are the positions we've looked at here, right? These are ones a little bit more expensive. However, there's maybe 1 or 2 experienced players initially we can get in, probably pretty cheap, maybe 33. I talked a minute ago about Bonucci and about Chiellini. I'm not saying the name for a second, but there's an example of guys at 34, 35. Kolo Touré, remember, was it Rodgers brought him in? And what I'm trying to say is this, potentially say, look, there's maybe an experienced right back, an experienced centre back here who we could get in pretty quickly, gives you a wee bit of breathing space. then to select the guys that you want to come in. They won't cost as much, but they'll add a bit of experience to the squad and maybe help us short term. Even we've not even done that.
Right.
Not even done that.
That's a great point. Because I was going to come back to Monty on his regards Carol Starfelt. And there's a fair point, Monty, regards this guy. What level is he? Is he really worth $4 million? Have we done really due diligence? And this was another argument we were having on Twitter about, I think Celtic are trying to run before they can walk, and a lot of Celtic fans, I think, are trying to run before. We are in a very low position of being second in Scotland, and we're a good bit behind Rangers in regards to a settled squad and a quality of squad. So, and people listening might just start shaking their heads, but we could quite easily go out and buy a Stephen O'Donnell to fill that right back berth. A 5.5/6 out of 10 guy who can do a job in the SPFL and do a job in the qualifiers. He's not going to set the world alight, but it only costs you a lot of money. He'd take a 2-year deal. He would paper over the cracks until Ange is ready to turn and go, right, I need somebody a little bit younger, a little bit quicker, a little bit. No, that's the idea. But we're not even filling in those key areas that need immediate. I mean, it's like basically we've got a patient on the hospital slab, and we need to quickly do triage, and we're humming and hawing about what we're going to have for dinner after the operation. I mean, it's just they're just not getting their act together.
Here's the thing. Right now, SPFL, we need a right back, a winger, a centre half, and I would say a striker. For me, the standout striker we can go and get right now within our budget, signed, proven, done, is Nisbet. Standout centre half was probably Gallagher, but he's gone now. He's gone to Aberdeen, I think. Is that right?
Yep.
Standout right back in the SPFL is Bill O'Donnell. I don't know. Standout winger in Scotland.
What's our boy for Hibs?
Boyle, Martin Boyle. He's Australian. He's Australian, fun enough. Really?
So there you go. Maximum £8 million outlay, 10 million at the fucking absolute.
No, I'd say about 3 or 4 million outlay because Boyle was £500,000. O'Donnell was nothing.
4 million for Nisbet now.
You'd pay,
but O'Donnell was buttons.
Again. That's what I'm saying. But
either way, that's your problem solved within your budget with players who know the league, who you don't have to integrate, who you get immediately, and in a worst case fucking scenario, they're going to be on 60%, 50% of the wages that have just left the building. If I'm Mackay and Postecoglou's coming looking for those 4 players, I'd go fucking get them tomorrow, because then I don't have to think about the footballing structure and I can get on with my job. And I'm looking at Dominic Mackay, a man not dissimilar in age to me, in a role that I would give my left bollock for, thinking, why the fuck aren't you doing that? Why aren't you going out and backing your guy? And you're right, Hector, it doesn't make sense. We're behaving exactly as it was, so conservatively. We're going to wait and see what the money is. We're going to wait and see what Ange comes back with. Yeah, 3 million when the club valued at 4. Well, we told no the fuck up because they are, was it Burnley offered us 12 going to 15 for Ayer, but we said it's 20. So
that's the thing. You can't have it both ways. You can't have things both ways. By the way, the Starfelt thing isn't the Scottish media. That's came for Norway, and for that, and also the Italian guy who's the fucking chief amongst the fucking media in the world when it comes to scouting. This isn't the Scottish Daily Record, whatever, making things up. This is genuine interest, and we're fucking about. But the Ayers one's a great example of that. I agree, you don't undersell Ayer. Ayer's not perfect, but he's a young guy with a lot of talent, good coaching staff. He could progress a lot more. The club's saying, hold on a minute. First off for 10 million, chase yourself. Absolutely right. Second off for 12, no having it. We're wanting 15 plus. Then, in the same breath as you're just saying there, a team's wanting 4. We're off on 3. We're not going to go to 4. And it's like, you can't have it both fucking ways.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
As if we're the only club that thinks that way. It's so frustrating for everybody, I think, right?
Right, the Celtic economics. It's very strange. So yeah, the Ayer stalemate. So Hector, you and I have different opinions on this about the whole. Do you bring people in before and that, or do you still hope that Ayer's going to turn out in the Champions League? I personally don't understand how they can expect to play him for a year, because we all know what happens if we're not even going to Ryan Christie's in his last 6 months of his contract. I think they'll literally begin him away by the end of the transfer window for $500,000, knowing that he's not going to kick him off for 6 months. It's human nature to protect yourself.
But wait a minute. Did you not just say at the start of this podcast, about two players who are out of contract, two of the best players in the Copa America
Aye,
and the
playing
European
for our
champion.
country.
But wait a minute, but they're out
Oh,
of
but
contract.
they're veterans of this. They're veterans of international football.
So
they're
my-
not young guys relying on their next contract.
So here's the thing, right? Unless we've got players lined up to come in, we can't sell. It's crazy. Ayer goes as soon as that centre back deal's done. Ayer goes at the door, right? He can't go now though, unless a player's signed tomorrow. When's the deadline? Is the deadline tomorrow night or Wednesday night? A player has to then obviously get to know his teammates. It's crazy. So Ayer actually probably starts next week. Edouard probably starts next week. Christie starts next week. And having said all that, right? The likes of Christie will probably the way that Ange probably wants to play the high press and the pace. Christie's a pest like McGinn. It might suit him to play with that type of manager for another few weeks before we punt him, right? But it looks as if we're going to start next week with the players who were here last season. And I'm just hoping amongst hope, crossing fingers, toes and eyes and all sorts, testicles, you name it, right? That Ange can get that extra 20-30% of these guys that had dipped last year. And I think that's possible. A lot of it's wishful thinking. I totally get that. I get that. Being a fan, a lot of things are fucking wishful thinking, aren't they? But I'm just hoping Ange can press a few buttons, can galvanise them, a wee bit of the Rodgers psychology effect, and say, guys, you're nowhere near as bad as you did last year, which they aren't. Thirdly, I can maybe raise the game 20-30%, and that might scrape us through and buy us another couple of weeks to maybe get one or two players in. But it shouldn't have to come to that. It shouldn't have to come to that. That's the frustration here.
So we've got our defence is going to be Barkas, Ralston, Beaton, Welsh, and Taylor.
No, Ayer will start next week.
We'll see what happens, right? But Ayer may play and may get some game time on Wednesday, but he's still got a slight knock, which I think we all know is a transfer talk for talking to his agent or sitting by his phone with his agent.
I think it'll be 3-5-2, Desi, right? And here's the thing: Barkas in goals. The three defenders with Beaton will be Welsh and Ayer. The two wing backs with Taylor left wing back and Forrest right wing back. And your three in the centre of the pitch will be Turnbull, will be Christie, McGregor, Edouard and Ajeti up front. As an 11, if he can get the best out of them, it's decent midfield to going forward. Defensively, again, question mark.
But don't forget, but if we can keep Mikey Johnson fit, it'll be like having a new player in the door. That's what he's a wonderful player. No harm to Mikey Johnson, but
and Cham's back.
Every year we'll get
There you go. And Cham's, look at that's definitely a player.
I mentioned that when Barkas never get transferred to Athens and Cham's staying. He's looking to prove himself, but you guarantee he'll be at the door on the last day of the transfer window. A loan deal, undisclosed loan deal to somebody. You know what I mean? I don't know. And again, we've not really even touched on that. These guys that we're looking to sign, did they then go into isolation for 2 weeks? Because they're not coming for the UK?
No, I think it depends on where
the elite sport is elite.
Aye, it depends where they're coming from, which country. I think that's part of it. By the way, Monty, your man, Bolly,
He's back. It's like 4 new players. It's fucking brilliant. But hey, there's a player in there. I told you.
Oh no, there's no. Funny enough, a 3-5-2. Suited him. But I think Ange. I'm saying 3-5-2 for next week based on the players we have. Is Ange no a 4-3-3? Is that no his thing? Oh, for fuck's sake! Forget everything I said then.
It'll be Dembele up front himself. Eddie will be away to Crystal Palace by then. Vera will be on the phone. You know what I mean? Right, okay. Let's look to round it up there. Right, so I think we've covered most things. We do have some good news in the fact that I have a ballot ticket for Saturday's game. Is anyone else going? Is anyone else lucky or unlucky enough on the ballot?
You do realise that's your only ticket the whole season.
A
friendly against Preston.
That's it. Imagine getting huckled at a game against Preston. Your season book's been rescinded, mister. You know what I mean?
Aye. No, I've been told I've got mines for the first home game against Rangers. So I've done okay.
That's okay, that'll be. But again, that could be pretty ugly. Thing I have to say, I don't take it as a direct comparison, but Jack Grealish against Italy did remind me a lot about Ryan Kent, that running across the pitch and looking as if you're doing a lot, but you're not really doing a lot. And that kind of, I've got the ball, but he just runs. He keeps like a foot away from people. so they're too far to tackle him, but he doesn't actually go forward. He just runs up and down across the pitch. So it looks the part, but it doesn't really.
Part of the reason why we were happy to let him go.
I know what I mean. So it'll be interesting Saturday. See what it's like being in an actual stadium.
Are you taking your flask and tartan shawl?
Oh no! I'm actually I've been relocated. I'm not in my usual comfy seat, so I might need to take a seat pad or a wee pad or something with me. I'm not sure what the plastic seats are like.
Is that to keep the fans as far away from the board as possible?
So I think I'm going into the 143. I think that's at the bottom of the jock steam. I think in the corner.
You were the south stand.
The main stand, please. The executive suite. The thing with this meeting, this next to Rod and Billy. No, I mean, did you see the coverage of Billy Connolly with Celtic mask?
It was great, wasn't it?
That was a nice touch. Again, I don't know if the club are selling these sort of things, but that's a marketing opportunity, Monty, being missed right there.
Absolutely. I'm sure Mackay's all over it right now because that's the most important thing he's looking at. I'm really starting to dislike the guy even off the back of this 1 hour conversation. Get your fucking finger out. Help the man.
No, I knew it.
Mackay must go.
I knew it. Something to say.
Sack the board.
Because in that famous fans media interview, the first thing he said and introduced Ange was, "I'm a Celtic man and I'm desperate to see us do well." Right? So we're talking about is he just repeating Lawwell's mistakes? Surely as a Celtic man, Dom Mackay would have knew fine well what Peter Lawwell did badly. So he wouldn't want to repeat those steps. You know what I mean?
Where's the enthusiasm, Desi? Where's the energy? Where's the communications? Where's getting up there and saying to the fans, right, this is my plan, bang, every second day until we're sick of the fucking sight of him? Where is that energy? There's nothing.
That's what I'm saying. So, but replace that, to give you a wee 3 minute of Ange mic'd up shouting, "Great Eddie, well done Eddie." And that was another. See that Ange mic'd up video. It was a shame that Stephen Welsh was the only person who got a negative comment. Welsh, you could have got that ball.
No, but Mackay.
Everybody else praise.
Mackay thinks he's ticking boxes by reaching out to half a dozen websites or half a dozen podcast units to say, let's take a question from you. We'll make you feel important. And most of the guys that do these things are just like ourselves. They do it for nothing, and they're good people, Celtics fans, season ticket holders, most of them, many of them. But get them on side, that doesn't work. That just doesn't work. Getting them on side, ask a question, it's bollocks, it's smoke and mirrors. Mm-hmm. Show your leadership qualities. We need a leader. Get your finger out the arse, get to the forefront, get to Celtic Park, get in the fucking front steps and say, right, this is my plan for the future.
Here it comes.
Give us a vision. Daisy, I'm like Monty. I'd do his fucking job in a heartbeat, right? And do you know what? I'm not trained in that at all. But it's no difficult, is it? It's really no difficult to get the fans a bit of passion and show them a vision. And right now, he's done nothing of the sort. He's done nothing.
He's over. Like they talk about the first 90 days in any job, and especially in an executive job, you're measured on what you do in your first 90 days. Now you want to be measured by your board. You want to be measured by, obviously, your manager, if you have one, but by him, it's the board and the chairman of the board. But he got a 2-month free ride into this gig, 2.5 months, I think, before Law left. So he's given the fucking easiest roll into this job. Like, literally, the seat's still warm and you know everything. You know the tea is, the coffee is, you've met everybody. But what the fuck have you done in those intervening 2 months plus? The clock for him only started ticking on the 1st of July, August, September. Right. He should be given no further grace from us as a fan base. If by the end of September, our first team manager still hasn't been supported with the right level of players, and we haven't made a statement of intent, and if he's still at that, and we haven't done that by the end of September, then he's a fucking shyster. We've just hired another Law, and another Beancurd.
No, Law Light, I hate to say.
Wait a minute, Monty. You of all people, the Marty Can CSC, for anyone who watches House of Lies, is Mackay's responsibility nor the fiduciary responsibility?
Oh, don't fucking start.
and for anyone who had 93 minutes for the first mention of fiduciary, but had the bonus that it wouldn't be me saying it, fucking in the text.
So thank you everyone for listening to Fiduciary Responsibility Celtic Supporters Club. Enjoy your prawn sandwiches.
Sack the board.
Right, okay, so Hector, prediction, you've done well with the Euros. Predictions, how many signings do you think we'll get across the line before we actually go into the Champions League game?
The game's next Tuesday night, is it not?
Do you think we'll get any? No, I'm not talking guys playing. I just mean how many between now and next week do you think we'll actually manage to close a deal? Regardless of personnel being available for next week's game, I just mean in general. Do you think they'll actually be able to get a deal?
Oh my God, it's a must. I mean, as Monty said, he's been there for the best part of 3 months, right? Albeit officially the 1st of July, but all that prep work all lined up. So he's got to land at least one player to help. But the irony is that player may not be eligible to start.
Mm-hmm.
May not even have a training fucking session with his teammates. So if he can't train with his teammates, it means it's got to be somebody, I think, keep me right here, guys, from the UK market. Is there other countries that get similar to us so they can start straight away? I don't know the rules for that. So that limits it for one, right? I think he's got to have at least two players in before next week. At least a right back and at least a centre back before next week. That's the absolute priority. Got to be.
Monty, it's going to be Ben Davies from Liverpool on loan in the final day of the season, isn't it?
I think that'll be the highlight of our entire signing spree. I think we won't see anyone until we know where we are in Europe. I think Mackay is another one of.
We're not going to be fucking anywhere in Europe if we don't sign anyone.
No, I don't. He'll rule it. If we get a fucking miracle, we get past Midtjylland, we'll sign someone. If we don't and we drop down into the Europa League, which is probably our level, then we'll sign once we know we're in the Europa League. I think this guy.
No, it's Europa League qualifying.
We still have to qualify.
I'm not sure that this guy just hasn't picked up the book and he's just playing it again the way Lowell did. We're not going to sign anybody until we know exactly what the money looks like. I think that's a fucking awful way to be, given that you've had a 2-month get to know you. You know, unless the books are that bad, unless Celtic's books are that bad that we are financially
They're not that bad.
It shouldn't be that bad now that they have been reinforced with 50,000 season books. It's a fair point, Martin. We've touched on it before. As actual built on sand that we can't really actually see the financial truth, but they have had an injection of 50,000 season tickets. So they should
our burn rate, remember, we had 12 million cash left in the bank in January, and our burn rate was about $1.5 million. That cash is gone.
We've brought in £15 million, £16 million since January.
Just now. So my point is, all of that safety net of cash is by and large gone. We now are running on a much leaner operating cost base, but we don't have the money to go out and blow 4, 5, 6 million on transfers.
But Uriah and Eduardo are going to get sold, and Christie's probably going to get sold, and possibly someone else. So nobody's saying we're going to invest 30 million. Yeah,
but that's the synchronising. That's what I think we're going to see here. If we sell those boys, we'll actually raise money in October. And if that's the game, if that's what Mackay is doing, keep a ship afloat, keep it safe, sure issue in October, raise 30 to 40 million, and then we build from there. Then you can give him a buy ball if he's done the bare minimum by September. But the watching should be on him, not Postecoglou. Postecoglou's working with a bunch of kids and players by and large who couldn't get.
Postecoglou's the man who got hung out to dry. The buck stops with the manager, and because of the bad will, and that's the reality. Myself, not bad will. I'm over it now, right? I want the guy to win every fucking game possible, but so many not wanting the guy in the first place, an unknown name. The buck stops with him, and if we're screwed the first few weeks, honest to God, may not be any coming back for that. I hate to say it. That's just the nature of the beast right now.
It'll be a tough August. Let's be brutally honest. But again, there's a bigger the question. Here's a question: Would you be quite happily write off Europe altogether, just to make sure we stabilise?
No.
Would you know? I would be quite happy.
The only way.
To know that we had a stable and strong squad enough to win the SPFL this year, guaranteeing Champions League next year, I would quite gladly take that.
No. The only way that the manager is going to grow into this role and actually put his stamp on his team is to bring them into the European context and see how we get to see them, to see him under a leg properly.
Marty, the counter to that, Brendan Rodgers in Europe, did that do anything for anybody?
I think it did. I think it raised our profile massively. Even getting cuffed 7.
Getting helped 7-0 with PSG.
That was Rodgers' tactics, though.
That was Rodgers. That was
But
Rodgers.
he said these players are going to have to evolve. They never evolved to a level where they could actually play against the elite. Bonnie Delia had the same philosophy. It didn't work.
We were unlucky.
Again, is it running before you can walk? That's my priority is the SPFL rather than Europe.
Both.
I'm not concerned at all with Europe.
But Desi, you should be doing both, though, right? See the size of squads nowadays, right? Europe's a must for the monetary aspect of it, right? It's a must. Every penny's a prisoner, as Monty alluded to there, right? Especially nowadays. For us to turn our back on the Champions League, which looks like what we've done, but Europa League, okay, it's not 40 million, but it might be 10, 12. That's enormous nowadays. We can't turn our back in that. And it allows the players and Ange time to develop more against a better level of team. We can do both. The size of squads, we should be doing both. We can't afford to just turn our back on Europe.
So you're saying you're happy right off the Champions League if need be?
No, I don't want to. I don't want to write off anything. But where we are right now, we've not us. I say us. It's not us. It's not you, me. It's not Ange. The Celtic decision makers look to have written off the Champions League based upon the fact they've not added one player to that first team.
Right. So the reason I'm phrasing that list is because I'm trying to think how they might be thinking. Again, it was like they're threatening not to renew their tickets, and they're thinking they'll renew their tickets. And sure enough, we did renew our tickets. And now are they also gambling that they'll be a wee bit upset for the first couple of weeks in July and August, but ultimately they'll turn in and bring in a guy for Liverpool on loan in the last week, and they'll forget about it because they'll just immediately move on to playing Hearts, and it'll be a case of just go on with it. And as you say, then it's all on Ange to make the best of a bad bunch or the best of a limited stroke young bunch. You know what I mean?
I mean, he's exposed no matter what. He's exposed in the match next week. Full stop. Yeah, and you're coming from is the Danish league a better league than the SPFL? Probably. Are this team of an equal standard to Celtic as we're currently constructed? Probably better.
Yeah.
That's just it's a fucking ugly reality, but that's where we are right now at this point in time. And it's not to be dark. It's there's a fucking classic old saying about now's the time. The old world's dying, the new world's trying to be born. Now's the time of monsters. It's an old piece of philosophy. We're in this fucking ugly limbo right now, but we hope it's going to be this new, better Celtic. And the guys who were entrusting with it, we don't even know. We've barely got to meet them. So
we're the underdogs, right? The bookies will probably have us famous because we're Celtic and the big club and the big stadium and everything else. But right now, Monty's right. Reality is, look at where we are. Look at the Danish outfit. Football sense, they're probably favourites to go over one of the two legs. Mm-hmm. What I'm just that clinging to any straw you can possibly hold on to. I'm just hoping that if Ange can get that 20-30% of the players that we know is there, we know is easily there, right? And can somehow, if he can get through those two legs and get us through, that'll be an incredible jolt for him and for the fans. And I really hope he does it for him as much as us. It'd be great for him.
We got an interesting couple of months coming up, without a doubt. I guess the question is, do we have as a support the tolerance for it? I really hope similarly we do. We just got to give the guy the best. Give him the best backing we can give him, because ultimately he won the lottery. He got the gig of his life. He's just come in at a time when we're in complete flux. But it's part of the joys of being a Celtic fan. It's part of the tapestry, lads. We've been through worse. And it hasn't even fucking started yet. I'm saying we've been through worse. I meant to be the optimist. But I think we're going to be fine in the medium term. I'm just not sure what's going on in the short term. I don't get a good feeling about it. But roll on next week.
Des, are you still with us?
I think all our optimism tipped him over the edge. I think Desi's had enough.
For those who can't see, we're doing a Skype call, and Desi has behind him, standing up, arms folded, the new Celtic manager, Ange Postecoglou.
Can you hear me?
I hear you now.
Yes.
Start your back now.
No, and I actually never heard anything after Hector, after you started saying if Ange can get that extra 30%, So I was broken up at this side due to my broadband, I'm afraid, so we've lost that. But I was going to say, I actually thought this was going to be a happy podcast, somehow just celebrating Hector's excellent Euro predictions. But sadly, we seem to have been doing a dark reality road.
Sorry, folks.
We're now looking at a cliff. And now I'm suddenly realising why Hector said he's going away for 2 weeks to the Highlands, where there's no any coverage of football whatsoever. He's just trying to get away from the harsh reality that is Celtic right now.
Oh man! But I think, Desi, what's your prediction for that? So stick a scoreline on next week. What do you think?
Are we home first? I don't even know any details. Are we home or away? Where are we?
I don't know. I was going to say we're home. I'm not sure.
I'll say if it's away. I'll go for an optimistic one each. I don't know even has the Danish league started yet. I'm not mind you used to know when we played Norway, they were 6 months into. Rosenborg were always 6 months into their season. Has the Danish league started? Are they already well into their leagues and stuff? I've not even paid it any attention, to be honest.
Isn't this symptomatic of where we are?
Yeah, exactly.
We're completely fucking detached from we don't even know the fixtures. We got possibly our biggest fixture coming up in the season, the entire season, next week, and we're not even sure whether we're home or away. It's fucking mad. I'm just checking here as we're talking to see if I can find it.
Okay, so we have it's at home. It's at home on the Tuesday, the 20th of July, 1945. We're at home. And then we've got West Ham the following Saturday. So I don't know if anyone's going to that, but
score prediction
TV with the excellent coverage. Right, so I'm looking forward to be back at Celtic Park on Saturday. I'll be thinking of you all as I shout at Ange from across an empty, cavernous Celtic bowl. The Dust Bowl, as it will be renamed, with only 2,000 fans in the place. Separated for COVID, but hopefully it'll be a decent result. And again, hopefully it can bring on. At the moment, some of the youngsters are looking no bad. Again, I don't know if they're bulked up enough to put up with the rigours of the SPFL, but fingers crossed some of them can develop enough to actually get some game time, which they never got under Neil Lennon. But time will tell. Liam Shaw, who knows, he might come good. He showed up no bad so far. Could be one new Scott Brown, superstar in midfield. Who knows? So all I can say, folks, is sorry for bringing you down on this post-Euro podcast. This has been sponsored.
There's a fucking editing job for you later out there.
Valium is available at all major pharmacists. Please feel free to contact the Samaritans.
You've been watching Ricky Fulton's Scotch and Rye.
That's it. What do you put in this water? Right, other than that, is this for me to say, as normal, folks, sadly Richie couldn't make it tonight. Ralph Mouth, so his diary is available at etims.net, where you'll find this. You'll find his articles as well as this podcast and other pieces. You'll find the podcast as usual on all major outlets, along with the other previous shows. And it's just left for me to say thanks for listening, and also thanks to Hector Bandido and Monty Burns for joining. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Desi.
Thanks, Desi.
So Hector, you enjoy your holiday. We'll try and send a carrier pigeon to let you know if we've had any signings.
I'm going to go off the Wi-Fi, and I'm going to go off the 4G and the Wi-Fi and everything for 2 weeks. That's the plan.
That's it. And come back a new man, refreshed, a new optimism. So this has been Desi Mondriff, the Optimists Are Us, Celtic Supporters Club podcast. Good evening, and thanks for listening.